So I have 7 o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead and call to order this January 10, 2023 meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Town of White Lake. I would ask first of all that you bow your heads for the invocation. Dear Lord, we wish to thank you for giving us the opportunity to be able to gather here this evening to discuss the business of this town. We would ask you guide and direct us as we attempt to do your will and to do those things that are in the best interest of the citizens of the town. These things we ask in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. The first item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. All the folks here are welcome to join in, and I would ask Commissioner Clifton if he would lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda items. Those include the approval of the minutes of the December 13, 2022 regular meeting, December utility releases, December 2022 limitations of use of remedies for uncollected taxes, December tax releases, December tax refunds. Any questions for staff in regard to any of the matters that are contained on the consent agenda items?
Yeah, I got one on the consent agenda. I noticed the last 3 or 4 months, used to was on the agenda, any commissioner's business not on the agenda. A lot of times things come up for a meeting that we can't put on the agenda. So I would like to have that in the record that we start back recognizing, because a lot of times things do come up and we like to hear other commissioners' opinions and voicing them. And I just saw that's been left out, and that's gonna bring it too long.
All right, yes, I'll be glad to do that. As I asked just a moment ago, are there any questions in regard to the consent agenda items presented as number 1? Did you have any questions on
Just
that?
want to be sure it's included on the agenda.
Okay, but you don't have any questions on the
No,
consent
no,
agenda items? Okay, all right, there being no questions on the consent agenda items, at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented in item number 1. Motion to approve as presented. A motion, is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Not all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Item number 2, administrative matters. Sean, I'll ask you to present those. First is the project updates on the White Lake water update, and then the sanitary sewer improvement project. Then I understand you may have some additional info on some of our projects.
Yes,
So
sir.
we'll take those.
Yes, sir. And the first item there for our Lake Water Restoration Project update for the January report to the board from Dr. Lawrenson. This month, she mentions a couple of topics. The first one being rainfall for the year 2022, and that there's less variability recorded in 2022 than in years past. That's to say the total lake level variation in 2022 was 7.2 inches. Whereas in years past, she mentions for 2019, there was a 12.7 inch variation recorded. 2020, there was a 10.3 inch variation recorded. And 2021, there was a 16.8 inch variation recorded. So the level, we did see more consistency in 2022 per the data there being reported by Dr. Lawrenson. And she also talks about that the volume of direct precipitation was equivalent to 61.8% of the volume of the lake. In her second item in her report, she mentions that the phosphorus levels were extremely low. In fact, they were the lowest found in the past 4 years for the month of November in 2022, which is the last month that we have our testing data on. It does typically run about 30 days behind schedule there to get back the results from the lab. But in November 2022, not only did we see the lowest level of phosphorus, we also saw the lowest level of nitrogen present at any point during the year, which are both good signs. In fact, she points out very good news. And the third item mentioned in her report is a historical study with recommendations in reference to a 1979 report done by the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission And this report was in response to some concerns back in 1978 and 1979 that were voiced by property owners, local residents, town officials, and other individuals utilizing White Lake, that the aquatic vegetation was restricting recreational uses, and there was some action needed to control the problem. So she puts that in there for historical context, and that sums up her monthly report to the board this month. On our sanitary sewer improvement project, the phase 2 update provided by Brian Cox, our engineer for engineering services, was a brief one. We are nearing the end of that project. They have finished up work in Shady Shores. They are going through the required utility testing requirements that are mandated by the state. And when they pass those requirements, they'll be moving on to the final phase of the project, which is the asphalt paving and the repair conditions portion of the project to finalize the project, to finish up the project. And they are anticipating that project will be done in January of 2023, pending no extreme weather events.
Can I stop here for a minute for Sean?
Sure.
I'm glad we got the loan, glad I got the grants, I'm glad you're on board trying to find this money. You know, I've been on the COG ever since I've been on this board, and it's all been about water and regionalization. And water was, we couldn't get grant money because our water rates were too low. There's always a problem with most municipalities. So we implemented raising our water, raising our sewer rates. And citizens of White Lake swallowed that pill. We built up reserve, got our water rates in line, talking about regionalization. Well, the taxpayers, I read this article, kind of upset me. I didn't know about it, so I happened to stumble on it. For years, we talked with Elizabethtown and doing our sewer. It's not that I was ever on board, but I see that we're excluded out of it. This article I read, it looks like it's Bladenboro, Dublin. A lot of these, municipalities never kept up with their fees and what they charge you. But the citizens of White Lake, and we all hear from the board, our rates are so high, but yet we have run our town in a conservative way and keep improving like you're doing, Sean, on our sewer, on our water. And man, we don't get a whole lot of praise or pat on the back. But it is disconcerting to me when you see how many people come to White Lake, the economic impact, and the revenues White Lake gives to the town to Bladen County. I love to see, Sean, you see how these other municipalities rate up to us. I like that from my own personal knowledge. After the taxes I just paid, yeah, I got a little bit of heartburn. And I know some other folks around the lake feel the same way, but in the future, I wish you could give me copies. When this is pretty substantial, I see you responded to it, but I see a state person said, we don't, they didn't see the importance of us. I don't know who that person is from the state, but I like to know for my own personal sake to know. Be knowledgeable, be informed. So when somebody hits me on the street and asks me about this, I got an answer. And I ain't got that deer in the headlight looks, but I appreciate the work the town's doing. I hope these citizens realize what we're up against. We've always had to borrow money, can't get grant money, but everybody else can get it. And our citizens are sacrificing, but we're moving in the right direction. I just wanted to, since we're on the sewer, share that with the board. And I don't know if y'all read this article or not, but in the future might be good to make copies to have in our packets, but I don't really subscribe to paper that off. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And if I may, we are in a very healthy place with both of our sewer and water rates. In fact, we are probably one of the few towns in this area that are not subsidizing their sewer with their water, which is very healthy long term. The regionalization conversation, as I understand it, has been taking place for decades, and we are definitely no closer now than we were back then. That is a fact. We are working through some things. It's not something that's completely off the table at this time, but you are correct. It's going to take substantial grants to make that a possibility. It's about $1 million a mile for the transmission lines. And we need roughly 15 miles of transmission lines to get to the treatment facility in Elizabethtown. That price does not include boring under the Cape Fear River. So that kind of lets you know what we're up against there. And it's not something that as a manager or administrator, I would recommend anytime soon to put on our tax base. So we are working towards looking for some of those grants. Bladenburg did receive a grant, which was in that article. Elizabethtown received a grant. Elizabethtown received the grant to upgrade their treatment facility to be able to handle the additional capacity. Bladenburg received a grant because they are a viable unit and because they are at a state of repair that's needed to a catastrophic level there. So we are in a good position from that standpoint of being self-sufficient. And as updates do come along on either the grant side or the regionalization side, I'll be more than happy to share those with the board. Are there any more questions or comments from the board before we move on to the next project update? All right, the other project update I wanted to share was in reference to our some of our other projects that are happening around the town, and I want to make sure that these projects are in front of the board just so we understand where we are, both in looking for some more grant money, and we also understand where we are on projects that have been successfully funded and are in the implementation phase. So I briefly wrote in the administrator's report this month that the town did not receive funding in the Rural Transformation Grant Program for phase 2 of our multi-use path project. Staff did meet with representatives from North Carolina Department of Commerce. We did receive some critical feedback, but feedback that we do believe can help us in the future. And we are making some adjustments to both our grant application as well as our application process to be in a better position for the spring round of funding coming up in the near future. That project is completely designed, ready to be implemented, but is awaiting funding. So we'll continue looking for that funding. At this time, there are no more updates to share on the water AIA project, the streetscape project, or the stormwater master plan project, other than to say all 3 projects are progressing in a timely manner. But all 3 of those projects were funded by grant dollars and they are moving forward. Staff continues to work with representatives from engineering companies on all 3 projects. Unless there are no questions from the board, Mayor, that's all I have on our project updates.
All right, thank you, sir.
John, excuse me 1 minute, Mayor. Did you ever get any response back from the county commissioners and you reached out to them for additional dollars after that meeting we had with Cameron McGill said come to us?
Yes, sir. They have invited me to go and speak at a meeting to make a formal request. Okay. And just that's I'm glad you brought that up. It's a great question. I was really wanting to see where we ended up with our grant applications to know exactly what to ask for in that request. We do have 2 more applications that are coming due in February that we'll either know we got or we didn't get on our water and sewer side, about $5 million more of application. But I do intend, and I have spoke with County Manager Mr. Martin on going forward with making a presentation to the county commissioners.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, item number 3, resolutions and ordinances. Sean, if you'll take that in regard to our public works vehicles.
All right. Be happy to. This resolution is a resolution, as mentioned, that lists 2 of our public works vehicles as surplus. That is to say they are no longer in the use of or no longer needed by the town. And the town intends to move forward and collect sealed bids for the purchase of those trucks. One of them is a 1992 Chevrolet 1500. The other one is a 1998 Ford F-150. And staff is requesting that the board approve this resolution so that staff can move forward and accepting the bids and eventually selling those 2 vehicles.
All right, I'd entertain a motion this time that we move forward with the approving that budget amendment 2023-05 as presented, so we can move forward with accepting bids on those vehicles.
Motion to approve.
Motion second.
Second.
Any discussion? Not all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Next is other business, previous agenda items. We have the departmental briefings and reports as always that are contained in item A. Tim, is there anything you wanted to bring up with his other commissioners' business? Okay. The next item is under item 5, recommendation to appoint a new in-town planning board member. The planning board at their December 15th regular meeting voted to make a recommendation for the town board to consider Lisa Young as a replacement for the in-town member vacant seat. And at this time, I would entertain a motion, either if anyone has anyone else to recommend, or I would entertain a motion to approve per the request of the planning board, Lisa Young as a replacement for the in-town member vacancy. Motion second. Any discussion? Not all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Item 6 is the town of White Lake wastewater report for fiscal year 2022. I would point out to you, we had a good report on that on our wastewater report. And just so you'll know, on our next water billing cycle, we'll be posting on there a direct link to the report, so people will be aware of how to access that and see what's contained in the report, just as additional information to the folks in the town. Under item number 7, of course, the town of White Lake will be closed on Monday, January 16th, in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. As always, we have emergency services, including water and sewer, on call for any problems that might arise. The next item is the open forums, 3 minutes per citizen. You should state your name and address. Is there anyone who would like to address the board at this time? Hello, Mr. David Clark. I didn't see you out there. Good to see you, sir. If there's no one to, oh, I'm sorry.
Jonathan, turn that microphone.
Yeah, flip that on.
Hey, I'm Jonathan Langston, and again, I'm coming for the Chamber of Commerce. I was, last month I had talked about the annual meeting that will be on January the 19th. And again, invite all y'all to attend. But also our speaker that's going to be at the annual meeting is also speaking at the Powell Melvin Agricultural Center the day before on January the 18th, which is a Wednesday at 4:30. And basically what they're going to be going over is the Uplift program for North Carolina, which is strengthening tourism in rural communities. The goal of Uplift is to boost tourism in rural North Carolina communities. Uplift works regularly across county borders to support local tourism. In realizing the vision of tourism in the community, including natural, recreational, cultural, agricultural, culinary, and built-in tourism. The program is implemented by the Appalachian State University in collaboration with Naturescapes. And anyway, it's basically just kind of a program that was dedicated to our 4 counties in our area. And so it should be a interesting thing. So if you can attend either on January the 18th or on January the 19th at our annual meeting. So thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Mayor, if I can, if any board member is interested in either of those dates, feel free to let Ms. Pat know, and she'll be more than happy to get you reserved and stuff. Alan.
All right.
Alan Pittman. I don't know if y'all really read these reports from Diane, but if you will, excuse me, notice some things really for the guys. She isn't addressing, or that report was not addressing the outage that we have in the lake today. If you look in there, things like the report said that turbidity that was created by any kind of boat was actually gone within an hour. It's a low pH. There are apples and oranges. I just keep asking over and over. Get a real scientist in here, please.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak? If not at this time, we have a closed session and regarding land acquisition, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11.5 entitled Land Acquisition.
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion second. Who did the second? Okay. Any discussion? Not all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.